Well, for more on this, let's speak to Amin Saikal, Emeritus Professor of Middle Eastern and Central Asian Studies at the Australian National University. He's joining us live from Canberra. Mr. Saikal, thank you so much for joining us. You know, the latest is President Trump's scheduled meeting with his national security team that's happening tomorrow afternoon in the Oval Office. What do you think could transpire from it? What does Mr. Trump really hope to achieve?
I think they want to really make a more clear assessment of the damage that they've caused to these nuclear sites in Iran, and also try to examine the future American reaction to any possible Iranian attacks on American assets in the region. So I think, to me, it appears to be a post-attack or a post-attack meeting on Iranian nuclear sites.
Right. What are the immediate regional consequences of the U.S. strikes on Iran, particularly for, allies like Israel and Saudi Arabia?
Well, Iran has several options now that they are really considering. I mean, one is to really play down the significance of the damage that may have been caused to its nuclear sites, and therefore don't directly engage the United States. In other words, not to retaliate against the American bases across the region. I mean, the second option that Iran has is to take military actions. And if it does that, that is extremely risky. It will invite a massive American retaliation. And of course, President Trump has made that very clear in his speech about bombing the nuclear sites. And the third option is, of course, to close the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is capable of doing that by sinking a number of ships in the strait, and that will be enough to deter many ships or oil ships to go through the Strait of Hormuz. And of course, as you know, something like 25% of the world oil exports comes through the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, the fourth option that they have is to hit Israel harder. That is the option that they have already started. And yesterday afternoon, Iran looped a large number of drones and missiles across to Israel, which has caused substantial damage. So it is now, as you pointed out earlier, the ball is in the court of Iran, and which option Iran wants to really exercise. My hunch at this point is that probably they will be focusing very much on hitting Israel as hard as they can. But of course, Israel is also hitting them very hard. And in fact, both sides are causing a lot of damage to each other. But how long this can really continue and both sides can have the necessary resources to do so, that remains to be seen.
No, absolutely. The strikes keep coming in. We're looking at retaliation. We're looking at Iran's response that's coming in. And President Trump, meanwhile, has also called on Tehran to end the war amidst all this frenzy that we're speaking about. How is that message being received internationally? And is it really influencing the current administration stance or diplomatic strategies, especially after the strikes?
Well, I mean, President Trump has sort of made it quite clear that this is a one-off operations on the part of the United States. But at the same time, he's called for Iran to come back to the negotiating table. And also the European Union has done the same thing. But from the Iranian perspective, what is there to negotiate? I mean, they were in the middle of negotiations about their nuclear program. And they had something like 5 rounds of nuclear talks. They proved to be inconclusive. But that's not to say that they were not prepared to really reach an agreement. And it was in the middle of these talks that Israel attacked Iran and launched this war against Iran, which is now becoming very costly for both sides. So the purpose of Israeli attacks was basically to realize Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's long-standing position to basically not only wipe out Iran's nuclear plants and nuclear facilities, but also to bring about regime change in Iran. This has been the ultimate goal of Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he's been working on it for a long time. And I think that's where really the problem is. The problem has not been so much the United States, but rather Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been trying to stay in power in whatever way possible. And of course, this is something that also the former president of the United States, Bill Clinton, has mentioned, that the desire of Prime Minister Netanyahu is to stay in power for as long as possible and realize his dream of greater Israel. And I think that's really where the problem lies, and that the United States or President Trump has really come on board with Prime Minister Netanyahu instead of actually putting pressure on the Prime Minister to restrain him from sabotaging the nuclear talks which have been going on between the United States and Iran.
Well, we're talking about a lot of countries over here that are involved. Some countries support the strike while others strongly oppose them. China says it wants peace and won't take sides. But with its big investments in Iran, will this conflict really force Beijing to get more involved?
I think it's highly possible, and particularly that if the Iranians decide to somehow close the Strait of Hormuz, which will certainly invite retaliation on the part of the United States and some of its allies. I mean, as you know, China imports considerable amount of oil from Iran. I think it's very likely that China will be drawn more into support of Iran. And let's not also forget that Iran does have strategic partnerships with both China and Russia. And of course, the Iranian foreign minister is right now visiting Moscow to have a meeting with President Putin. And I think what they are going to really discuss is basically going to be the crisis and how Iran decides to retaliate against the American bombing.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. That was Professor Amin Saikal, Emeritus Professor of Middle Eastern and Central Asian Studies at Australian National University.